Hi guys, it's Tia Dewana here. Welcome back to my channel. This video is gonna be all over the place, just to be honest with you guys. It's literally like 3 videos put into one, but I'm just gonna show you guys the basic on how I construct my wigs when I am making a wig with a closure and or a frontal. Okay, so let's just get into it. I always use the mesh dome caps, the kind that stretch when I construct all of my wigs. Why? Because everyone's head is not the same size. For the most part, I use a 22 circumference canvas. I have 22, 23, and 24. I've never used a 24. I don't even know why I have it, to be honest. The 22 is kind of like an average size, and as long as you use the dome cap, then it'll stretch to fit someone's head who is a little bit bigger. I've used a 23-inch one time, but for the most part, I use 22. So this is how you measure your wigs. You do the same thing on your head. You're going to start in the front, and you're gonna go all the way around. So what you're doing is measuring the circumference, and whichever inch it stops on is how big your head is, and that's the size canvas that you need to use. With me, I am a 23. I still use a 22 for my wigs just because the 22 still gives me room, and it gives, you know, a tighter fit. But this is how you're going to transfer the measurements to the canvas. So you're going to measure your head. You're also going to measure your head going down. I don't know how to properly say that, but you're going to give yourself a little bit room in the front, because when you pour your lace, your frontals and your closures, you never start right at the beginning of the cap. You go a little bit in the front, and then you bring it all the way down and you measure it that way. You do the same thing on your head, and then you just use pins to stretch the cap a little bit more to match the size of your head. I hope this is making sense. If you need more of a better demonstration, then I can include that in my next video. So before I put on my frontals and my closures, I do like to wet them. That way the hair does not get in my way. It can just lay down, it can lay flat. That way I can actually see what I'm doing. You never want to start your closures or your frontals directly on the dome cap. You want to bring it about an inch or two. I usually do about an inch or up to an inch right in front of the cap. That way when you lay your lace down, it gives you a little bit more room in the front. This is something that I've just started doing because I am starting to use a sewing machine a little bit more. But I also do this when I am also using or making wigs by hand with a needle and thread. I like to outline and give myself a blueprint of where my tracks are going to lay. So you want to lay your frontal down as flat as you can, and then you're just going to trace the line that follows the frontal. And then you're going to do the same thing in the back. So if I'm making a fuller wig, I use my thumb to measure the lines in between. So after I do this line, I'm going to take my thumb and I'm going to go right above that line, and wherever my thumb stops is where I'm going to make my next line, as you can see here. And this is when I do this, when I am doing a much fuller wig, when I want my wig to look full, I use my thumb. And I do single tracks throughout. It takes a little bit more time, but I love full hair when I'm making a wig for myself. Much people prefer something a lot thinner, and I am going to show you how to do that on the next one with my frontal, my closure. So at the top is where you're going to want to start. If you are doing double tracks, is where you're going to start making single. Right about, I want to say right below the line I just made is when I'm going to start doing my tracks single. That way the top lays flat. And then here pretty much is an estimate of how close I'm going to get to the frontal. And again, you don't have to follow every single line, because I always find myself skipping some lines if I feel like it's going to be too full, or I'm adding more lines if I feel like it's going to be too thin. But this is just an outline of how your wig is going to look. And the same thing with this closure. You see I'm bringing it a little bit in front of the cap just to give it a little bit more room. And with my frontals, I like to take one single track and go all the way around. And I got this technique from Pink Mill, and I've been using it ever since. And I did this on my last frontal wig video. I'm gonna go all the way around. And this is because when you're sewing your tracks on regularly, if you're just laying them without doing this technique, let's say if you do a hair flip or the wind blows or something like that, you can literally see all of your tracks. So you want to use something that is going to cover those tracks, and that definitely is going to help. Now with here, I am doing double, and normally I use 3 bundles on my wigs. That's how full I like it. But with this one, I am using 2 bundles, and I pretty much just take a chunk of my fingers, my index finger, my thumb, and that just determines how far I want them to be. So you can see right here, well, if you saw it, I'm sorry if you didn't, but just to estimate how far I'm gonna put my tracks. So when I'm doing double tracks, I make them a little bit wider, and when I'm doing single tracks, I bring them a little bit closer together. But this is the outline of my closure. I also did just want to show you guys, if you are making a wig by hand, you want to have as many pre-threaded needles as you possibly can, and you want to make them super, super, super long. Look how long these needles are. It's definitely going to save you time. You don't have to go back and thread. You're going to have some left over, which is always a plus. But this would, it'll definitely help save time on keep having to thread needles. Now, I just recently discovered this lace tint by the Wig Gurus. I literally have one for every complexion when I do make wigs. This stuff works so, so good. I used to have to dye brown dyes. I used to have to boil dyes and dip the lace in that way to tint them. But this method works so much better. All you need to do is just spray it on the lace. You want to have a towel. You want to have your wig sitting on a towel. Don't be like me and put it on the counter. But you want to just spray the lace. And you can either just let it air dry for about 10 minutes, or you can go in with the blow dryer and dry it. And you can just keep spraying on. I usually do about 1 to 2 layers just until it matches your complexion. And this is the wig that I made, the frontal wig that I made with the kinky straight hair that I showed you guys in the video. I hope you guys really, really like this video. I know it was all over the place, but this is just some tips and tricks that I use when I'm constructing my wigs. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and see you guys in the next video.